In December of 1999, an oil tanker sank just off the north coast of France in the Bay of Biscay. The wreck of the Erika was one of the worst environmental disasters to hit the coast of Europe, with devastating effects to the coastline and wildlife. The Erika broke in two after encountering 100 km/h winds and 6-metre high waves. It was carrying 30,000 tonnes of heavy fuel oil, and around 20,000 tonnes were spilled in the incident. The Erika was an offshore salvage operation as it occurred in open waters, and this meant action needed to happen very quickly, as the vessel would be subjected to waves, currents and the weather, all which would rapidly deteriorate the vessel and could potentially lead to a catastrophic environmental disaster. Unfortunately, in the case of the Erika wreck, this is precisely what happened. The disruption and pollution that followed was devastating. The tanker broke up in the Bay of Biscay and encountered further problems when initial rescuers tried to tow the stern of the ship out into deeper waters to minimise the risk of oil spillage. The ship's stern began to sink, and eventually the Erika disappeared into the Atlantic. 400 kilometres of coastline was affected, an area that had already been hit by an oil slick when a larger tanker ran aground in 1978. Between 60,000 and 300,000 seabirds died as a result of the spill. Oil continued to drift and impact on the wildlife and habitats until spring 2000. Fishermen, oyster farmers and the tourism industry were all greatly affected. French beach resorts were deserted, fishing was halted and shellfish banned from consumption in the aftermath of the oil spill, leaving the local economy greatly weakened for years. So what actually went wrong? Total was found guilty of failing to take into account the age of the tanker Erika and of ignoring maintenance problems when it allowed the rusty 25-year-old vessel to sail. The owner and manager of the tanker, along with the Italian Royal Institute of Naval Architects certification firm that found the tanker to be seaworthy, were also found at fault. The presiding judge, Joseph Valentin, said that Total had committed an error of negligence that is linked to the sinking of the Erika, and that the Erika went down as a direct consequence of the serious rust corrosion caused by insufficient maintenance of the ship. In the UK, there are several organisations and strict rules and regulations regarding ship seaworthiness to try and prevent incidents like the Erika from happening. The Royal Institution of Naval Architects is an internationally renowned professional institution whose members are involved at all levels in the design, construction, maintenance and operation of marine vessels and structures. Members of RENA are widely represented in industry, universities and colleges, and maritime organisations in over 90 countries. The Merchant Shipping Act of 1995 contains a large section concerning prevention of pollution and liability for oil spills and pollution, and compulsory insurance details for tankers that carry oil. It also contains legislation on the enforcement of fines and punishments for polluters. SOSREP is the Secretary of State's representative for maritime salvage and intervention. The role of the SOSREP is to represent the Secretaries of State for the Department of Transport in relation to ships, and for the Department of Energy and Climate Change in relation to offshore installations, by removing or reducing the risk to safety, property and the UK environment arising from accidents involving ships, fixed or floating platforms or subsea infrastructure. SOSREP's powers extend to UK territorial waters, which is 12 nautical miles from the coast for safety issues, and to the UK Pollution Control Zone, which is 200 miles, or the median line with neighbouring states for pollution. SOSREP has the authority to make crucial and often time-critical decisions. They work closely with the Maritime Coast Guard Agency. SOSREP's key responsibilities include acting at the earliest point during a shipping or offshore incident to assess the risk to safety. They also try and end an incident as quickly as possible and to ensure that that risk is properly evaluated and appropriate measures taken to prevent or respond to escalation. They monitor all response measures to significant incidents and implement powers of intervention, acting in the overriding interests of the UK and its environment. Participating in major national and international exercises is also very important, and they review all activities after significant incidents and exercises. Marine salvage is the process of recovery after incidents at sea and involves towing, refloating of sunken vessels, patching and repairs, and recovery of a ship and its cargo. The protection of the environment and reducing the effects of marine pollution are also a high priority. There are also strict laws involving oil spill clean-ups in the UK, which might not have been put in place during the Erika wreck, as the French had primacy over the incident. Some of these laws come under the Marine and Coastal Access Act of 2009. The Marine Management Organisation set out the Marine Pollution Contingency Plan, which includes information on oil spill treatment products and equipment used in clean-up operations. The MMO approves oil spill treatment products for the whole UK and approves the use of oil spill treatment products in English and Welsh waters. They maintain a list of approved dispersants. There are 6 main types of dispersants that are used in oil spills. There are just plain dispersants, bioremediation agents, sorbents, surface cleaners, sinking agents and solidifying agents. They also provide information on the strength of the dispersant and provide a chart very similar to HazChem plates to allow you to know what type and strength to use on a particular pollutant. There are 3 main strengths that are used. Strength 1 is a hydrocarbon solvent-based dispersant applied undiluted. Strength 2 are concentrates diluted 1/10 with seawater before application. And strength 3 are high-strength concentrates applied undiluted. UK-approved oil treatment products may be used without prior consultation where there is a genuine risk to human life or to the safety of an installation or vessel, for example, where there is a serious danger from fire or explosion. The use of equipment for controlling, containing or recovering oil is exempt from marine licensing under the Marine and Coastal Access Act of 2009. The use of booms, mats and pillows, which are completely recovered from the sea after they have absorbed oil, are considered to fall under this, and do not therefore require a licence to be put into the sea. In the event of a marine pollution incident, the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, or the MCA, may initiate the formation of an environment group with the aims of providing environmental advice to operational command. Environment groups can also be formed by ports and harbours and the Environment Agency for incidents originating from land. The Department for Energy and Climate Change can call an environment group for a pollution incident from offshore oil or gas platforms. A massive clean-up operation was put in place with the Erica wreck. Aboard the Erica were 26 Indian crewmen, and the scale of the disaster meant that France had to call in help from abroad. The rescue operation of the crew involved British Royal Navy Sea King helicopters from the UK that were called in by the French Navy for assistance. Violent storms and currents battering the affected coastline during December quickly turned the oil spillage into an ecological catastrophe. Hundreds of seabirds were airlifted to Exeter in England, but many died en route. Total Fina, a French company, put more than $6 million into the emergency clean-up operation. Large sums have been spent on an oil company compensation fund and programs to help the affected areas recover. The greatest costs were incurred by the retrieval of the oil remaining in Erica's tanks. Here is a short clip from the recent Concordia wreck that demonstrates how oil is retrieved from the tankers.
Commence Operation Hot Tapping. Salvage divers and engineers will try to drill through the ship's oil tanks and retrieve the fuel with minimal leakage. Here's how it's done. Attach a milling machine to drive a hole through the tank. Then, replace it with a hose, a pump, and a specially made heater used to heat the oil up before extraction. The oil is then pumped up through the pipe to a nearby oil tanker.
A robot was deployed in the early stages of the Erica wreck to examine the state of the tanks, as the large quantity of oil believed to be in the sunken wreck had been a serious worry for the French authorities. The initial reports were quite favourable. The images from the underwater robot suggested that the tanks were unlikely to leak, but the damage had already been done. So if this had happened in the UK, what would the action plan have been? Well, in the UK, the following actions usually take place after an oil spill occurs. The first port of call is Her Majesty's Coast Guard, who will ask what the problem is, how many people are on board, the location of the ship, and other essential information. It will be decided whether the incident calls for a local, regional, or national response. The Coast Guard will then alert the counter-pollution and salvage officer, who will judge the scale and severity of the incident and inform the necessary people, including scientists from the Maritime Coastal Agency, who will in turn alert and inform environment groups and local authorities on the best course of action to counter the pollution. The Erica incident could easily have been avoided if the owners of the ship and the authorities who deemed it seaworthy had obeyed the laws and legislation laid out in the Merchant Shipping Act of 1995. International laws meant that the owners and operators of the Erica were held responsible for the oil pollution. This seems unfair on the ship's operators, as they had been given permission to charter the ship and may not have known the extent of the ship's damage. The devastating effects from the pollution affected the coastline and inhabitants for many years after the initial incident, creating one of the most expensive marine pollution cases European waters has ever seen. Although counter-pollution strategies, like proper upkeep of ships, regular maintenance checks and licences, may seem expensive in the short term, they help protect and sustain the marine and coastal environment and reduce the risk of massive payouts and massive loss of life in the future. Thank you for watching.